Hello, welcome back to another episode of Ask the Doctor with Dr. Jeffrey Sherman. Today, we're going to be looking at how you should develop a relationship with a doctor and for preparation in case you get sick. The COVID cases in the US as of today, September 10th, are as follows. There are 6.39 million cases of COVID-19. And there's 191,000 deaths. So, of course, the infection rate has now passed 6 million. That is a lot, but hopefully the death rate will stay lower than it was last time there were a lot of cases because now we know a lot more. So let's welcome Dr. Sherman on the show. Hello, Dr. Sherman. Nice to see you again.
Thank you. Nice to be with you.
And so now I want to start. Let me make sure it's working. Yeah, it's not working. Yeah, a little bit of a glitch. Anyway, so I want to start with. Let's start with the physical. When a person does a physical, do they see a doctor that they're going to be seeing every time they get a physical?
Yeah, usually it's an annual event. You hit a certain age and you want to get an annual physical exam. It's your same, as long as you like that individual and you have a good relationship, or even if it's the first time and hope to build a relationship, you want to get that physical exam with the same doctor. It's a physical exam. Should be pretty comprehensive up from the head to the toes, eyes, nose, ears, throat, neck, looking for glands and thyroid and lymph nodes and chest, heart, lungs, abdomen, reflexes, neurological exam. Not super detailed, but some of the general, superficial tests of the neurological exam. And then, of course, the vital signs, the blood pressure, and the pulse and temperature are all part of the physical exam, but should be with the same doctor every year, provided you and he or she have a good relationship.
Yes. And I imagine so whenever you often hear advertisements say like speak to your doctor, or if you're in a specific situation you might get asked like who's your primary care doctor. This is the doctor that they're talking about.
Right. So it's your primary care doctor. You're going to go to this doctor ideally every year around the same time of year, get that physical exam, ask those questions that you've been writing down for a little while. And it's that primary doctor that will handle a lot of your internal medicine things, blood pressure, cholesterol, heart checkups, and we'll order x-rays and things to keep things going. If anything unusual pops up on some of these initial physical exam or initial studies, that primary doctor will then send you to whatever specialist would be indicated in his or her opinion to dig a little bit deeper into what may be going. The internist's knowledge is very wide. They know a lot. They know about everything. It's not very deep, whereas the specialist's education is pretty deep but pretty narrow. So you want to pigeonhole and get to the right doctor, considering whatever findings they may be coming up.
Exactly. Specialization. Very, very nice skill. And so if someone who's been seeing their primary care doctor and something seems off with them, then they would be sent to a specialist. However, I imagine that if let's say the person's normal body, their normal body, is a little off compared to the average normal body. Like they might have some kind of something with their blood, maybe some slight genetic condition. That would be where a primary care doctor would be helpful, right? Because a primary care doctor would know kind of like the normal of you.
Right. So you establish that early on in the visits. You get baseline blood work, and if something unusual pops up for that first time, then you may look into it a little bit, and then that's the follow up studies turn out to be nothing, and then from that point on, certain blood tests or certain results come back that same quote abnormal or off the normal, but normal for that patient, and then that's what you can expect, and then it's something you have to keep looking into, time after time. It may pique your curiosity at first when you're first getting to know the patient, like, oh, this is a new finding. Your white blood cells are, 18,000. Let's look into that. It turns out that's kind of the way the guy is. You send him to a hematologist. He does a couple things. Everything's okay. So, going forward that the guy lives at a net white cell count of 18,000. And that's the way, which is much higher, not much, but a little bit, somewhat higher than the normal range of, 4 to 10 or so. So, you want to establish what's normal for that patient, but it might require a little investigation along the way because we don't know what's normal for that patient until it becomes normal for that patient after an initial look. So, once you see a little bit of an outlier, you want to make sure that's all it is and not anything more serious.
Right. And like in that case, the person might feel completely fine and their bodies are measurably pretty fine, except in that one specific measurement, which appears abnormal. But if everything else is fine, then there's no real concern.
Right. If they're asymptomatic and you kind of keep an eye on it or do some initial investigation and things kind of pan out to nothing, then you kind of leave it alone and go from there. But you don't. The good internists will do some work on their own. I'm not saying that. I mean, some have quicker trigger fingers to send patients to specialists. Some will do some work on their own. So it just depends on who your doctor is.
And it's very important. I imagine it's very important to have it is very important to have a primary care doctor in general. I mean, you should be going to a physical every year. But also, it's good to have a doctor that knows you for situations where, like the ER, in case you get some kind of emergency, you have to be rushed to the ER. The ER doctors can have somebody to call to know about you and your body, anything else you might have that they would need to know. And of course, if it's all in the same hospital system, I imagine the information is shared quite quickly, right? Like in Cedars, if you were to have a doctor at Cedars, they have a computer system.
Yeah, exactly. And that's important. You're in town, out of town, you have your primary doctor on your, you have your phone number nearby, so you can just say, hey, I'm here from out of town. Go to call my primary doctor for the history of my medications and just everything else. Or if you're local, not all the time does it work so easily, but oftentimes, yes, the primary doctor and ER in the hospital system will be on the same network. So your blood work or any studies that were done through the primary doctor's office are on the same computer system, as well as any, if you're really lucky, and it's not always like this, but doctor's notes and office visit notes can even be on that same computer system. In a perfect world, there would be one database where all the notes and every encounter are there. Maybe that will happen one day, but for now, we were just lucky enough to get to the computer system we're on, and a lot of the information is there.
One thing that I would like to ask is it possible for a doctor that is more of a specialist to still be a primary care doctor?
Good question. It depends on the specialty. A cardiologist can do some internal medicine. A pulmonologist can do a little primary care with head and neck, colds and things like that. And a cardiologist can do some cholesterol and heart stuff, and blood pressure. So you get that. An endocrinologist can do some diabetes and thyroid, internal medicine. But when you talk about a GI doctor like me, or an interventional cardiologist who does stents and stuff on the heart itself, or a neurologist, or some of the other specialties, they pretty much stick to their specialties. Why? If you start to do, you can certainly, if you're bored, you go through an internal medicine residency before you go through your specialty fellowship. So you can certainly be an internist too. But as a specialist, you want to get referrals from internists to your specialty. Like I want patients to come from other internists to my GI practice. And if I'm performing internal medicine and eating up some of that market, those internists are not going to say, "Hey,
Yeah.
go to him." When I'm eating, you know what I mean? When I'm doing internal medicine,
it's not good for business.
Referrals, so I stick to GI, and other specialties do it the same way. But if you're a cardiologist, you can kind of dabble in some internal medicine type stuff. But for most part, there's internists and then there's specialists.
Exactly. And I imagine you can't be an internist and then recommend yourself as a specialist.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's not like that. Now you want to get the referrals from other doctors, yeah. But if you start to do internal medicine and GI, then the internists are like, he's doing internal medicine. He doesn't need my help for anything, and then the GI dries up, and that's really why I'm here.
I imagine specialists probably become primary care doctors for some people if those people have some kind of medical condition that has to do with their specialty. Like if somebody has some kind of heart disease or neurological problem.
I'm sorry. The computer went out a little bit. What was that?
Oh, okay. I imagine if someone has a specialist would be somebody's primary care doctor if they have some kind of a condition regarding that specialty, right? Like if they have a heart condition.
Right. I mean, if you've got a funny infection of the lungs or a tuberculosis past, you're going to go to a lung guy and he's going to be your guy, because that's pretty much all you do, all your medical history is. If you're going to, have, a cardiomyopathy at a young age, your internal medicine doctor will be one who does also some cardiology. So you're going to go to that type of doctor. So, yeah, there's a little bit of a slant. You kind of might be pigeonholed into a certain specialty / internist early on. But for the majority of people out there, you're going to an internal medicine doctor who will do a lot of great medicine for you. And then if something falls, if there's a little nodule on an x-ray one time, or if it's, you have this diarrhea he can't control, he'll send you out to the right place.
Right. Now, if your primary care doctor is a specialist, is that the same doctor that does your physical?
Yes.
Okay. All right, That's good.
Yeah. And blood work, and then that specialist, if he runs into something he doesn't know, will then give you a different specialist.
All right. They all work together.
Specialists too. I'm not an internist, but I've had patients who don't have internists, and they go, "Well, yeah, do you have a good internist?" Or I would detect something, and I'm like, "Well, that looks a little bit unusual. Why don't you go see this, lung guy or something?" So, you want to make sure you get the patient in the right place.
Now, if we have a question from the chat.
Good.
What are good questions to ask a doctor when you go in for an appointment when you're feeling okay?
Tips about diet, tips about supplements, if you're curious about that. That's a good question. Dietary tips, exercise, this exercise, that exercise, which is best for me, given my, schedule, my time, my need to lose weight or not. Health preventative things. How often do I, need a chest x-ray? How often do I need a colonoscopy? How often do I need blood work? Things to just kind of have a sense of where things may be headed in the upcoming, year between the next visit, if all goes well. Yeah.
I imagine not that many people go to doctor's appointments when they're feeling fine.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. Guilty. Right here.
Guilty.
I mean, I don't. I've done it, but I don't do it every year. I do it maybe every couple years. And as a doctor, I have a little bit of an inside track. If I want blood work done on myself, I can go do that, which is really why a good part of the doctor's visit. And if you're feeling good, then okay. But there are certain things that can be picked up at a doctor's office, a routine. The neck exam, you might feel a lump, and it might be a thyroid bump, or your blood pressure could be a little bit higher than it may give a red flag, and then you're all of a sudden your blood pressure's up, and where you didn't expect that, now you're maybe on blood pressure medicine for a little bit. So, it's really good to get that yearly checkup. I'm saying it, but I'm not doing it. What kind of credibility to the audience? But nonetheless, I have gone to doctors many times, but maybe not yearly. But I'm promoting the yearly physical exam.
Yes, and that's important. We have another question from the chat about, should we choose a doctor who has admitting privileges to a hospital? What does admitting privileges mean?
Well, all doctors, I shouldn't say all, most in the community should have admitting privileges to a local hospital, meaning if they sense something's off, or even from the doctor's office or on a phone call or wherever, and the patient's complaining, the patient goes to a nearby hospital, and the doctor can then take care of them at the hospital, as well as take care of them in the office. They can take care of them in the hospital. So you should have a doctor who does have admitting privilege. However, I will say that's not as important these days as it once was. Not many doctors are admitting patients to the hospital anymore. They're focusing on their office practice. So what we have is, you have your doctor, the internist in the office, and then the hospitalist, as we call them, to work at the hospital to take care of you when you are admitted to the hospital, who of course is in communication with your internist on the outpatient side. But it's going to be the hospitalist who's going to manage your hospital stay, knowing your history from the medical records on file on the computer, and being in touch with your internists through email and phone calls. So it's not as important as it once was to have an internist who has admitting privileges. It does help, but even if they do have the admitting privileges, most of those internists have backed away from admitting patients to the hospital and left that to those hospitalists, who are very good and they're excellent at hospital care, and that's kind of their job. They're there admitting you overnight. They're like ER doctors for the medical floor. They're just working the floor all night long, all day and all night. They're doing shifts.
So these are doctors, but they're doctors of like the hospital, hospitalists, or at least they're specialists of the hospital.
Some are employed by the hospital. Some have their own private practice. I mean, they're just hospital doctors. And so they're a private practice, but they just do hospital work. And there's groups of them, admit to the hospitalist group. We have one here at Cedars called the Genesis Group. The Genesis Group probably consists of 12 to 15 doctors that at any given time, 2 or 3 are admitting patients, and then their 8 to 10 hour block of admitting patients goes away, and then 2 or 3 new ones come on, and the other ones follow up on the patients they admitted, and then go home. And there's like a call schedule, kind of like a residency program, if you will. And some work the day shift and some work the night shift, and they pass on the patients to each other when the time is right. But you're always looked after, and they do only hospital things, and they're in connection with the outpatient side, of course, because that's where most of the patient's medical care has been given, is on the doctor's office. So that Genesis Group employs like 15 doctors, and they, they're a private group. They just bill through their group, and Medicare pays them, or whoever pays them, the insurance pays them, and then they get paid a salary, and that's how it goes. They're not necessarily employed by the hospital.
All right, that's pretty cool. Now, I should write down the questions that I come up with on the fly. If that's right, because admitting privileges are becoming less important, Or no, not because they're becoming less important. They are becoming less important. Is that because of COVID, or did this start before COVID?
No, this was a trend for a long time before COVID.
Oh, okay.
Um, doctors were getting a little bit spread too thin to do outpatient and inpatient. When I was in medical school, there was a thought that this may be coming down the pike. I was in medical school I graduated 25 years ago. So when we're graduating, you're like, and I applied for an internal medicine residency. The thinking was, okay, well, you're going to do inpatient, you're going to do outpatient, you're going to do inpatient, you're going to do outpatient. Now, 25 years later, this practice has been in place for a good 10 to 15 years. If you want to be an outpatient or an inpatient, internal medicine doctor, primary doctor. And so this shift toward hospitalist versus outpatient doc has been in the works for quite some time. And similarly to the the outpatient, where you go to the same internist and develop a relationship with that doctor, if possible, and I hope you're certainly not admitted to the hospital many times over the course of a time, but if you get readmitted a couple of different times, ideally you'll get that same hospitalist to look after you, so he'll know or she'll know what is going on with you, and so you get a little continuity of care that way. So it's kind of like it works on both sides of the spectrum there.
I think I think what all of this, I think all the reality of this is that it's just like it's really just the concept of friends, I suppose, where it's like if you become friends with a doctor, then your relationship and their attention to detail is going to improve a little bit. Just having a positive relationship with your doctor is a good idea, I'd say, given how they're supporting your life.
Yeah, no, you're going to need favors from your doctor. You're going to want to get out of jury duty. You're going to want a note to skip. You need to know from work. You need a new some disability maybe. You want to be on a good relationship with the doctor. So, you'll follow the rules. You'll be compliant. You'll take your medicine. You'll be on time. You'll be respectful and all that stuff, because you're going to need services not only when you're there face to face, but other times when you're out of town and you're nauseous, you can verbally call in a prescription, things like that. You're going to need letters from work, disability forms filled out, other things filled out through insurance companies. The doctors have to take time to do that. And if you're not on a good, relationship, I mean, it's going to be harder for you to get it done. Let's just say it that way. I'm not saying doctors will pick and choose what they want to do, but
Right.
It can be a little bit tricky getting some of those services done if you're a jerk to the doctor or you just don't, mesh.
Exactly. Now, I would like to bring up how you might notice that the lighting around me is a little different, and that's largely in part due to the skies being a little orange here. We are based in Los Angeles, and there are fires happening in the forests north of us. And finally, the smoke has reached our location and is darkening the skies a little.
Yeah, it's insane.
Exactly, it's insane. So I would like to spend a couple minutes talking about smoke health. But maybe just before that, there was a question in the chat. What are good things about starting Gatex? Gatex? I think it's the name of a...
Yeah, that's out of the blue. That's an out of the blue question. We haven't really discussed it. Gattex, Gattex. Is that how
Yes.
they spelled it? Gattex. It's a medication to give in a very selected group of patients who we call short bowel patients, short bowel syndrome.
Well, I'm glad it's your profession.
Removed. It's a super specialized kind of patient. I mean, I may have one or two of them, but they're not on Gattex. But my point is, they've had bowel surgically removed for various surgeries, small bowel surgically removed, that they don't have enough small bowel to sustain their weight, and when they eat, they can't absorb enough calories and nutrition, so they're on TPN or IV nutrition to sustain.
Oh no.
So they, but Gattex, if you take that, it will enable them to eat a little more and lessen the TPN. Maybe not get off of the TPN. TPN, so total parenteral nutrition, IV food, and patients with short bowel syndrome live on IV food every night. They hang a bottle of IV fluid and they sleep as it drips in. If you can take Gattex, you can maybe lessen, or some patients get off the TPN and they're able to eat their calories. But it's a very specific.
Yeah, it is a specific drug. I mean, I haven't heard of it. Obviously, it's very important that it exists.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, you can't. Yeah, you're kind of. Oh, is the connection back?
Oh, there. I'm back now.
Yes. Okay. Wow. I mean, what can I say except like, wow, it's a medication for a quite a disastrous surgery. All right. Well, hopefully we've satisfied your question on Gattex. Right back to the smoke in California. So there is smoke in the air. That's a fact. And not all masks, I don't think surgical masks are going to protect you from inhaling smoke, right? But our N95
masks.
N95s
are really what you need now to protect yourself from the smoke. Those particulates are, now it's not COVID. It's not going to give you, a virus, but but you need to, but that can damage the lungs. It can cause temporary damage to the lungs and break down some of the inner lung tissues and harm them. So you want to stay inside, or if you're outside, have that mask. If you're going to be out there for a prolonged period of time, a quick walk across the street or walk quickly, not necessary particularly, but I mean certainly can't harm you to wear it. But the N95 is what you would need in this type of air.
Okay. I guess that's if people didn't. If I don't know how easy it is to get an N95 mask now.
It's not so easy. I mean, yeah. I don't know if you can find them, they're a little expensive on Amazon or places like that. So yeah, it's a little tricky.
It's important to try to limit your inhalation of smoke by staying inside. If you happen to have a filter, I imagine you use that. Most air conditioning units have some kind of filtration system, I believe. Something called an HVAC, HVAC. Have you heard of that?
Yeah. The AC is air conditioning. I know what HV means, heater, something. I mean, it's yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, they take the air, and it purifies the air. Plus, you have a filter in your ceiling in most central air units, and that recirculates the air and it filters it through that central suction duct. So that should be checked and replaced every 6 or so months. And just keep the doors and windows closed, air purifiers in the home, and stay indoors. Hopefully they can get these things under control and things can blow through pretty quickly. Maybe we can get a little moisture in the air and so on.
Exactly. We need rain.
Yeah.
We need rain now. Yeah. We're not firefighters. We're not specialists of fire, but we do know that smoke is not good for your health. And if you have some kind of filtration system that can block it, that's great. N95 masks are one of them to prevent your inhalation of dangerous particles. Well, that was kind of a little bit gloomy, I guess. I mean, funnily enough, it's also gloomy and lighting.
Maybe next week when we're talking, it'll be clear and we can see the mountains again.
Let's see the mountains again, yeah. All right. Well, I I think we're going to end it off here now for this episode of Ask the Doctor. If you have any questions, you can email us at myworldsciencetv@gmail.com. And if you happen to be in the Los Angeles area and you want to make a private appointment with Dr. Sherman, you can feel free to email his office at towergastro@gmail.com. That link is in the chat. Or you can call the phone number for the office that is also in the chat. And until next time, stay safe.